How's it going, guys? Today I'm going to talk about the new combat enchantments and which I personally am going to be running on all of my tanks. I have mentioned it before in some videos, but it's a bit of a point of contention going into this mod, which is expected because people don't have enough experience to know exactly what is the best in practice, since they are new items. And I guess specifically the combat enchantments part of the rework is the part that most people are bothered about with this whole thing. It definitely is the biggest point of debate, and we'll get into that in the video. Also, a big cause for these debates on ways to build in Neverwinter is because they love putting traps in the game, and they've done this for a long time, putting options for things that sound good but aren't necessarily. You can probably find examples of this in class feats and powers going back to the beginning of the game. But anyway, I definitely see the combat enchants for the tanks being the new deflect versus crit avoid conversation that people love debating, and I'm going to break down which I'm going to be using with some reasoning. One of the most discussed things about the combat enchants and why they are so controversial in the update is the way they affect the stats on your character. The lack of combined rating, as we probably all know by now, reduces your stats by a lot across the board, 5% of each and every stat total on your page. This is tough for a lot of people since the idea of balancing your stats perfectly is something people really like to do, but it is important to remember that stat caps is not usually the most important thing when building. Better set bonuses and overall item level is a better improvement to your base damage and effective HP than the effect the stats make, again, usually. When people are discussing the damage increasing enchants, it is something to note that you do lose defensive stats, making you take more damage from enemies. But when you take into account everything and calculate that into effective HP, the amount of damage you can take from enemy attacks, the effect is very, very small. At high item levels, from what I've calculated, this is as little as 4% loss in effective HP, which isn't a big deal at all. You can also maximize the amount of damage you can gain from those enchants by rebalancing your stats. You aren't going to be walking around with 85% power and combat advantage just because you put on a new enchant, so you also gain more than most people expect. I know it's still a tough situation of losing something to gain something, but that just seems to be how they want us to build in the game. The same thing applies when we look at the defensive enchants. Although if you are using one on tanks, you don't have to worry too much about losing damage as much, since we will already have low offense stats to begin with, and also we have many other ways to generate threat besides just increasing our damage. So onto the enchants themselves. With the new system, there are 6 new enchantments. I guess you could call them new, although most are based off of previous enchants in the game. We basically have the Bilethorn, Flaming, Prominence, Negation, Soulforged, and I guess Frost or Frostburn, but kind of mixed with like a Terror or something. Basically, it's nothing new, so there are a few things we can infer from how useful these things will be in actual gameplay, compared to how good they might look on paper. If we just focus on the defensive enchants, since this is a tank-focused channel and video, and I assume that's what most people want to know about, we are just looking at these 3 here, the Flash Freeze, the Fortified Nature, and the Soul Shield. I'm debating maybe at some point switching to a more damage-focused enchant, if it's in the cards to lose a bit of tankiness for speedrunning or something like that, but we'll see in the future. Of course, the Soul Shield is something you have the option of using, since it's going to look pretty nice for people that don't want to waste Astral Diamonds on Scrolls of Life or Scrolls of Mass Life if they go down. A big reason not to use it on tanks is that you will lose threat if you go down, since that's how it's worked with Scrolls of Life in the past, and the old Soulforged, and even getting picked up off the ground. So it's safe to say that that's how this one will work also. Personally, I don't ever want to die at all, so I'm going to skip over that one for now. The real debate will be between these two, the Flash Freeze and the Fortified Nature. Now this is the point of the video. I saw a lot of people when these enchants first got announced saying the Fortified Nature was going to be best for tanks, and I can understand why they think that. On paper, having all those extra defensive stat percentages looks fantastic, but you have to think a bit more to realize why it isn't effective. Taken from the negation, you can figure out that the uptime of these stats is like half, like 50%. Judging on enemies constantly hitting you, the stacks will count up and then expire when they hit max. This is the part that people miss. If the stack stayed as long as you were getting hit, that would be perfect. This thing would be great, but they don't. At the minute, it's very unreliable. If you don't get hit enough, they go away. If you get hit too much, they also go away. This is a reason why the negation wasn't as popular previously. Also, stamina enchants existed, but it's a reason at least. I don't ever want to be caught with my pants down getting hit by a tank buster while I'm missing all those more crucial defensive stats like awareness and defense. Also, besides all this, the enchant doesn't even work properly. It doesn't add the defense right now, so luckily that's helping people look outside of this enchant and towards the champion of this discussion. I present to you the Flash Freeze. Not only does the Flash Freeze work, as I tested with the help of Ayva's account right here, it's also broken right now in a good way. Chance to proc is 100%. Every hit procs the enchant. which is even better than the chance it had of 10%, which I would have gambled on anyway. Each stack reduces the enemy's damage by 5%, only 4 in the video because it's not maxed, which gives a massive improvement to not only your effective HP, but the entire team's. 15% reduced damage is like having permanent uptime on all those damage reduction mounts we had to use to get through Tom and Zariel when they first released. When you bring it back to the idea of group content and buffing the team, reducing the enemy's damage against yourself and 9 other players in a trial content is a no-brainer, especially when it means I can build my stats to be the exact balance I want and not be relying on random chance to have the stats I need at the right time. Even if someone were to say, look, I ran the numbers, if it was fixed, the fortified nature gives you more effective HP than the flash freeze, it wouldn't matter to me, since I'm never going to be walking into a big hit from a boss with 12.5% missing defense and awareness, and my team also wouldn't be that much tankier if I was running one that only affected me. It's basically 10 times the effect when you take into account an entire raid team. I hope this video gave you guys a bit of insight and justification to why I'm personally going to be using the flash freeze over anything else. Maybe they change them in the future, but I'd definitely love to see tanks using this as a default, since it'll just be so good for helping yourself and your team survive. I know this debate will be far from over since people are still talking about the crit avoid versus deflect on tanks to this day, but honestly, at least people are interested in the details of building and playing tanks, and to be honest, there's not that much else to debate. Stay safe guys, and thanks for watching.